Hey guys, Boris here. A single comp that is currently flying under the radar and is going to have even more place to shine with the changes in the B patch is the Xayah comp right here. The main conditions that we're looking to play this comp are having either the Boar or the Serpent constellations. Altar can be fine if you're able to get that stacking fast, and I would greatly prefer it over Huntress or the Fountain. And for our openers, we're ideally playing from a high tempo with an econ augment around something like a Caitlyn TF, Teemo, or Ezreal Gnar with snipers. Now, this comp is extremely bow hungry. You want to really be having at least 3 bows for this comp to function, therefore do not be playing this without some form of a bow opener. Regarding itemization, Xayah definitely wants that Rageblade and Kraken. Your last slot can be flexed. Red buff is performing quite well, otherwise Last Whisper, GS or Deadblade are quite fine. But the main thing to note is that you don't want to be putting Infinity Edge onto this Xayah. Her chunk of damage is in the passive rather than the recall, and the recall is the active, which is going to synergize with the IE, but is going to not be providing the necessary amount of damage amp. However, for that Jhin, the Infinity Edge is quite good. Another thing to note that artifacts are not that great. There are only 2 great artifacts, which are Flicker Blade and Horizon. Therefore, I would bypass on that portable Forge augment right there. Now, since this comp just before the B patch had to make a little bit of a gap, therefore it functions very well with strong combat augments, such as the Comeback Story, Baron's Lair, Bronze for Life are all amazing options you can be considering. If you are playing from a loss streak, something like a Comeback Story can be quite good, and ideally you're also able to go for a 300 anima cash out for one of those frontline items to further juice up your frontline, since doubling down on frontline itemization in this comp is quite good, as your win condition is being able to stall long enough for the Xayah to ramp. On that front, pure tank Rammus is better than the Nunu tank. For Nunu, you will want to have those mana generating items, Protector's Vow and Adaptive Helms, for him to ideally get 2 casts off, and you can even be protecting in that case your Nunu behind your Rammus so that you ensure extra casts. Ideally, you're going to be spiking very hard on stage 4, as this is where you're going to be picking up a chunk of your rounds, and once you make it to level 9 you're slotting in Rast, but if you hit Morgana too, it's quite fine. Another thing to consider during your drawdown is that since you have a couple of 5 costs here, you can replace this Bard with a Quirky just to get those 3 meeple in, and having another secondary carry that you could be considering, which is going to be able to hold those Jhin items if you have them made for tempo. And once you find the Bard, you can immediately consider dropping out of the Quirky. Now, for our gods, Kayle to get these items is quite good as well, and we can use quite a lot of Radiant items. Yasuo for some of those strong Hex synergies is amazing as well. Ahri to make up that econ gap, especially if you're playing from a tempo, and same goes for Evelyn, allowing you to push higher tempo and having that extra durability for your frontline in the end game is amazing. Now, without further ado, let's jump in game with a pro and see how they approach this line. For our review, we're going to be jumping in game with Nanande from the C region, who at the time of recording this is the number 8th seated player in the C leaderboards, has had a great climb so far, and has also peaked at the number 1 spot a couple of times there. So we're already starting out with a golden dupe, and this game took place just before the A patch, and as you and I might have known, the amount of 3-star forecasts that were flying around was insane. Therefore, we already would want to be considering leaning for that possibility as a win out from here. And we also have that Rageblade opener right away, so which is going to be greatly playing into the comp that we're looking for. But we are starting out with a Primordial opener. That's always going to take prior, nonetheless, how good of a spot it is for you, really, because the extra resources can always be used to spike your board harder and on more efficient terms. Opting to hold on to that Poppy there so far, but we see that we have some options already for the front line. We can just drop it. Not particularly hot on the Poppy unit itself, and we are currently lacking some of bit of damage on our board. For our augment selection here, nothing really appeals to me. I would be probably defaulting the Warlord's Honor augment right here. It has the possibility of playing either for us into the reroll, since we have components that could kind of lean into the Primordial reroll as an option. Blood Offering is simply quite weak, and the same goes for Heart of Steel. Especially if you're playing around an Econ Engine, then we're not going to be able to really fully tempo around these 2 augments, and they do not have that clear of an endgame direction. WoW 1 Magic is a good component augment. However, you want to be playing it from some kind of caster comp, obviously. Calculated loss seems to be the best option. Getting offered another econ generating source is amazing. Especially since we have that Ezreal already, that if we find any other timebreaker, we can be dropping that. Aura farming, it's good. However, you would want to be at least securing some rounds into this stage too. We would probably have to do a scout around and see how much of the lobby is open if you want to be playing for it. However, this is more of a gamble. Calculated loss is more if you want to be consistent in your climb, and that seems to be his approach here. And he's going to even full open just to make 10 right here, and opting to hopefully hit another timebreaker unit. So we're not going to be having too much going on, but this is obviously one of the ways how you can be playing. A lot of players sometimes seem to shy away from these kind of plays or overplay the spot as well. The thing is, not to shy away is because whenever you have some kind of augment, especially calculated loss when there are so many weak players, you have to be ready to do this kind of a thing. Same goes with anima, you have to be ready to position weirdly, even so you might get opened on. And why they overplay it sometimes? Because you do not have a clear plan of spiking, right? If you're going to be playing from a low HP's kind of a spot, you have to be ready to be spiking on something that is either good in meta or ability to stabilize hard on stage 4 with your 2-star 4-cost upgrades. That means you have to be planning out your items and seeing, because the item value is what fully amplifies the damage of your units. You have to be picking augments that are going to enable you to be quite strong, so we're probably looking for another either item or combat augment, and combat augments that have an item augment that will have immediate value for ourselves, and we have to go from there. The same goes for, we have to play some kind of a board during stage 3. We have to be taking these unit kills whenever we have a chance to do so. Might have to require positioning for, also a focused fire, just so we get a couple of units down. Now, we have mapped out here the Nova board, but we see that there's players around in the lobby who are playing into Nova. We see a couple of Earth players. The other player might consider playing into something like a Nami. Therefore, we do not want to be really contesting the players with a better spot with a Nova emblem. They're going just having too much of a value. Also, blue streaking is quite good in this Soraka encounter whenever you can just pick up another form of a life through that. However, here, Solar Hex would be more appealing, obviously, for some kind of a magic dealing comp. Otherwise, Yasuo, I would believe, is something great, and you have to consider our components. John, having a single Sunfire here would be quite great. We could use these components quite well. We already have an open glove, and in this comp, we only really want to get to the gloves when we get to the Jhin, but you should not be planning so far ahead for your 5 cost, in my opinion. Therefore, I will be probably leading Soraka here, and also if you're going to be playing from one life situation, this is going to be providing more of a value. Able to pick up an Aurora here as a potential. If we find some of the anima units, we might be considering tagging in an anima as well. Finally able to find that timebreaker, so we're slotting that in. Yeah, going to hold on to this Aurora, but sell off the rest. Now, it seems that he had also considered a possibility of playing around some form of a meeple board. I'm not too hot on the meeple board myself, but with the changes in Apex, it might see a little bit of a shining light again with some of the tougher matchups of it being gone. Now, we saw that the rest of the players in our pool are playing some kind of a board, so we opted to slot in this MF, but just going to give up on her and pre-level here as a potential for... Well, we can't just do it because we're going to be making 50 anyhow, since we're in a loss streak, but we have the potential of maybe, high rolling some kind of a unit. If you high roll a 4 cost, we have the potential to also try to stabilize our board on that stage 3. Ideally, then we go for a 6 loss and then try to win out from there. Now he has mapped out that Zaya board as well, so we're going to see how he manages to approach it and what he's exactly going to be playing into. I believe that he has checked that his Stargazer is one of the viable options. I would highly advise not playing this outside of the other ones. Serpent would be ideal from this kind of a spot. Boar is also an amazing 3 splash that you can be going for. Do not need to be worrying too much about that extra gold that is going to generating. That's going to be great in your tempo spots if you're able to do so playing around the CF. And obviously we cannot really be playing altar from this kind of a spot, in my opinion, because you want to be trying to sack those units early on, right? You want to be stay hard stabilized on stage 4 instead of still advancing. Now we're still just simply chilling here, going for that 6 loss. also seems to have mapped out mech since we are lost. We had the components for it. Now, for our next augment selection, best default option here would be the small grab bag. Teaming up is not bad either, but we are quite rich already, and that's we don't have want this upside of 6 gold realistically. And charge transfer is great in your TF comps. There are a few other. Anyone that does a big chunk of the damage on a single tire is going to be great with that. Group Hug is a good combat augment. However, if we are playing around the Stargazers, we're going to have a tough time making use of it. And team building is more your reroll augment that we are not exactly looking for at this point. Unfortunately, do get dropped another Sunfire, which is not exactly what we wanted to find. And our components are actually not really ideal at this kind of a spot. We have these tank components, which is obviously great if you're wanting to be securing some form of a strong front line. Now we see there seems to be another full open player, so we're going to be... Yeah, we managed to queue into them, but let's see how close this fight turns out. But we're otherwise going to be looking to utilize our component animals then to secure these bows in hopes, and we'll have to try to make a decision. It's very hard to be holding on to the decision to this long, and ideally by this point, ideally by already the first gold selection, you should be very clear about what you're going to be playing for. And then we managed to sack that player, so that actually quite increases our win share, right? 2 players going for a win out is bound for one of them to go quite rough. Unless you both manage to be on a couple of lives, then you have a chance, but again you could just queue into someone that are strong. Which ideally you always want to be playing for a win out from 2 lives, because you never know who might high roll in that stage 4. But now we have reduced their capped, and we are going to be able to go for ideally the 300 anima cash out for ourselves in order to find either another damage item or a frontline item. Anything should be quite sufficient in this state. Mana regen is not exactly what we're looking for our comp either, therefore band together, just aligning ourselves here with the Soroka is going to give us that extra little bit of health buffer, and it gives us a little bit of gold. Unfortunately, it's another chain that we're not excited for again, so we might consider leaning into actually Yasuo here with the glove. I'm not sure. Okay, we're going to take another chain. Is what it is. Hopefully we have this one Reforger, we can try to make use of it, and we have to scout around before we're going to be considering slamming this, slamming the Bramble. And for our unit selection, we'll be able to pick up the Zaya, so that kind of lines with us right there. Going to be pick up a cloak and the bow right there. Obviously, cloak is also high of a value of a component, as you could just be making an even shroud. It seems as that's a little bit better, that the last whisper is performing a tad better than since you want true tank items on your front line, more of a case, but even shroud is also quite acceptable. The only thing to remember is I would prio baking that first. But that's going to be your third bow ideally, because Kraken and Rageblade are mandatory. Into the first glove, into that last whisper, because IE is just not that great. If you have to slam a steadfast for a tempo, that's also completely fine. Now we opted to go for that Bramble slam there and sorting out our anti-heal with the Sunfire, and leaving an open build here is completely fine. Now we're going to be able to figure out what we want to be doing with our next components quite easily. Now we complete our 10 loss, and we are probably going to have to be sending it here for 1. Pick up the Lament right there. Also, he seems to be slotting in a Corki in this form of variation, so let's see how he managed to slot. I believe that the Corki... Because he extremely dig deep, he just values the extra time he's going to be getting so high, and we're able, as a consequence, we're able to pick up the Nunu 2 before any of the Vanguard other players are able, Blanc players are able to pick him up. Complete our roll down here, which is quite fine. Able to find that Bard, so we're slotting out. Yeah, so it seems that we are going to be flexing in the Quirky until we hit the Bard, which is quite fine. Otherwise, I believe you can just be running the Rast as well. Oh no, sorry, Quirky until we find the Jhin, right? Jhin is going to be also one of the tougher units to be finding. And if you're able to get the 3 meeple active, and for example only have a new one, then the Rambus 2 is going to be quite efficient of a tank as well. But you ideally want to be digging deep in this stage in order to secure both frontline and backline upgrades, as this is the stage you definitely want to be winning rounds. This combo does have a harder time at winning out, so you want to be taking those stage 4 and early stage 5 rounds by having a strong board. You have my bow here, I believe. I will quickly just recheck our item situation. Now we have opted to go for that last whisper, but you have my bow here. Does not seem to be that bad of an option either in my... we love the attack speed, and we can make the GS and then transition the last whisper. Side effects, not exactly, I don't believe. We have our tanks are mainly shielding, therefore this is not going to have that much of a value. Otherwise, every 5 seconds healing, this is nice going to be in the frontline durability. And since we have hit our board, I'm not exactly sure about the value of malicious mechanization either. That would be if we wanted to reach our cap, but we're not going to be capping that high, so doubling down on econ is not that hard of an option. It seems that he loves to absolutely have side effects. I have a tougher time on this read of this augment. So it would be interesting to see if he picks it up. Okay, clock start acceleration works even better. We love the attack speed. Now, Bronze for Life is another good augment that we might be considering. As we can see, our trait up is fitting in quite nicely, and having that extra damage jump, since we already don't have it on our unit, is going to be quite strong. Also, a nice thing to note that he's prioritizing Ramos 2 here with the 3 meeple as a tank, which generally should be the case because the CC tank has to pay the tax for having them on CC, so this is more of a true tank right here. Now we're able to steal our Mordekaiser 2 finally, and now we should just be sitting and going for that level 9, most likely trying to find that Jin. Opted to reforge our sword for that immediate board value, and now we're going to be able to get double down on the frontline items, which is honestly not bad for this comp. This fully enables your Xayah to ramp, like that is your win condition, having the strong durable frontline, and simply outscaling your opponents through that Rage Blade. For our last selection here, I believe the Storm Hex here is actually going to be quite good. The Xayah has that splash through, and she can't just... Our positioning is semi-locked in anyhow with the Stargazers, therefore it's not that bad, and it gives us another tier. We do not want... The Serac offering the second time in a game is just simply a Sunfire. Little troll, illusion of choice, and I believe this open... The open tier can become another mana item for our new just to get the stun faster out. Able to pick up a Morgana, I believe that was so that we are able to just simply have an immediate slot in for our level 9 if we wanted. No, we picked up a Shen, alright. No, we pick up the Soul. Sell it anyhow, okay. There are options to cap around Shen. This is ideal if you have something like a Bastion emblem that you can be going for. As then you can just slot in a Shen and run for Bastion and main tank your... Ideally you have the Bastion emblem on either Nunu or one of the backline casters, depending on how your itemization works out. And as you can see, now since we went for that high tempo play of rolling, we are fully stable right now, and we have managed to hit our units before any of our competition was able to really take them out, and since we are going on a win streak right now. And this is the ideal spot we want to be, and we're also going to have that Soraka healing kicking in to try to keep, perhaps, well, it's going to be a long ways if you're able to make it to the 3 lives place, but any kind of HP from these low HP spots is quite good. The lobby overall seems to be quite close in terms of what is going on here. For our last, here would be ideal 3. Is he considering taking the 3 tiers? I do not think so. It's double blue buff. Rod and a Crown Guard is actually... Well, we're going for that. We're going for Protect... Obviously, yeah. Protector's Vow here is also great. But another way how you can kill Rods in this comp is by going for that Crown Guard item. It's quite good. And it synergizes with Steadfast quite well as well. Therefore, simply having that sorted, having ways of killing the extra components is quite good. But since we're having that Bard, itemizing him is not that bad. The thing with the Bard is that without items, this guy is a little bit useless. But if you're able to 2-star him with items, and he also holds utility items greatly, your Morello, and well, I wouldn't put the Last Whisper on him, but in your AP comps, obviously, the Void Staff is going to be quite strong in that sense. Still a little bit on the poorer side, since we had to go for such an aggressive roll down for 3-7 already. We're going to be able to delay, and we are in a 2 live situation And as well as we've noticed our matchups, they are not the strongest ones around. This is still a Fiora one, but with that Nova Emblem, she can definitely be quite nasty. Fiora, one of those units that with items can do absolutely nasty things. But this Xayah is doing God's work, really. You can see how strong she truly is if you're able to find a perfect setup for her. And we're holding on to these extra Xayahs, the potential to go there. Finally find that Jin, so going to be slotting that in. I mean, I think that we're playing on a Huntress, which we can still see this is not the ideal scenario in any form of a fashion. We didn't play from a win streak. We didn't exactly play one of the preferred constellations. However, still, the power is there as long as you're able to hard stabilize her. And then we have the potential of being dropping down, but we still keep fighting these players that are very lower on the cap. They simply have not managed to hit the units. It seems the lobby to be contesting themselves in many kind of ways. And we took out their front lines by that aggressive role. Now we are on also on 6 Xayahs. We have the potential to go for a Xayah 3. Now that we have this death cap, we definitely want to be focusing on itemizing our Bard next. Might have a little bit of a tougher time of finding him, as I believe there are a couple of fast 9 players, but this is one of the most crucial rounds. We can see the rest, half of the lobby being below 10 HP, and we should be at least securing our top 4 here. Playing into that too much value board, which definitely falls off from the spot. Their win condition is essentially finding that Riven 3, which just had not happened. Also, yeah, so at this point we're obviously digging for our 5 cost upgrades, but holding on to these 4 cost outs is also quite valuable, especially if there is a lobby that reaches high cap. That is going to be your win condition. But it was a great read to steer away from this contested lines, play a line that has the advantage of playing 2 different kind of tanks, and by aggressively rolling at the start we were able to deny that Nunu or delay that Nunu from other players as well. Able to pick up this Jin too, and going to does the ballsy play of reforging that death cap simply values Jin to with obviously with items here a little bit more. Adaptive Helm, not great, but not going to be the worst one in the around if you're having the option. Sitting on 6 copies of each, and seems to be selling off the Bard as a potential to go for the Xayah 3. Now we find the Dead Blade, which is absolutely one of the best items for our Jin. And it's also interesting to see how he is opting to actually protect his Nunu throughout this case. Does that give him an option to reach 2 casts with the 2 mana items? Quite possibly, and yeah, he did seem to cast 2 twice and during that fight. And that is actually going to be immense amount of value if you can get that. Sometimes this Nunu, if he is fully solo frontlining in this kind of a position, he can just get bursted down if their enemy carries right there. And well, if he gets some kind of a stun lock, then you don't even get a single cast off, which is losing a lot of value for this unit. So it seems that if you have this Rammus, you can be opening to protect him. And now we are playing against this quite high capped ASOL board, but they just simply do not seem to be getting there, as they do not, even though with the Storm Hex they do not have some kind of an artifact, and definitely showcases the potential of this comp if piloted well, and we simply have this insane amount of itemization. Also having this Lament there from our anime cash out is providing a little bit of extra damage on the unit with the Rammus with a Bramble Vest, and is absolutely insane whole frontline strength that we have put up here, and then we are making up for a backline strength through that Bronze for Life as well. And fighting at the Ghost Fighter. Now the Riot Classic, 2 players alive, 2 players streaking. I don't know, it's more fortunate for us or for them that they dodge us. Now they seem to be on a very high cap here, but going to be slopping to that Dead Blade on the Xayah there now with the... I would have imagined that we moved one of the last Whispers right there onto the Jin, but we'll have to see. Now, we have to remember, we have this golden dupe, so we're only single a Xayah away at this point in order to be securing our 3-star Xayah as well. Now, the fight is very close, but unfortunately they just have so much value on their board right now. But if we take a narrow loss like that, we should still be making our way to the PvE round. I have the potential of finding that Xayah 3 maybe. does it seem that they might have swapped out? Going to be swapping the Jin on the Stargazer Hex there, positioning our stronger frontline units in front of them there, and just moving the Adaptive as another extra form of frontline, as our key of the victory is stalling long enough. And maybe this Ramos being positioned there with the Bramble West actually did it. Very well read, but they are on with a little bit of they are still remaining alive. So we'll have to make sure we do that again. Could potentially consider hover scouting this Ramos. However, since they have that Shen, they are going to be very slow on swapping. This is the thing that you can utilize for your swaps. For your positioning is to just know that if the players are there, they have these Shen that you can simply hover scout or really prematurely place your strongest tank in that side, and then they have to decide, are they going to be fast enough, or if it's only like 2-3 seconds remaining, are they going to be sacking some of that Shen value on their board. Now, let's see how they do this again. This Ramos is extremely strong, especially with a Bramble West and Lament, and he just seems to be able to hold down that Nova. The true damage not exactly kicking in from the emblem, and we are able to secure a win. Very well read spot by Nanande right here. Finding the open line in the lobby, playing the lost streak perfectly, finding our outs, finding ways to cap this board higher than it has to. Especially at this point, since it was right before the B patch, the board is not the strongest one in the meta. So we have to be finding what is going to allow us to tip us the edge or make up the gap to the highest tier boards. Finding the extra items, doubling down on frontline items before, as we do not really have another great damage item carrier until we make it to those 5 costs. And then finding a great strong combat augment again to close it out, and positioning ourselves well and playing for another potential out through the Xayah 3 with the golden dupe that we carried around the whole game. I would like to thank you for watching, and I hope that you learned something new, and I wish to see you in the next one. Have a good one.